Right, so, all right, well, we'll go ahead and open with the pledge, and then Matt will lead us in prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Dear God, thanks for giving us this opportunity to come here today. Please let us be good examples of what you want us to be. Help us to serve the community well. In your name, Jesus, amen.
Amen. All right, and with that, we'll go ahead and officially call the August 17th Kosciuszko County Parks and Recreation Board meeting to order. And one of the first items on our agenda is to review and approve the minutes from our last meeting on July the 20th. Thanks for preparing those, Rhonda. Appreciate that.
I'd like to move that the minutes be approved as written.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Same sign. Okay, the motion carries and the minutes are approved. Thank you for that. Let's go ahead and move forward with our agenda and talk about the RFP for Chenworth Trail Extension. We've done a lot of work in the past in a short order of time, and we've made a lot of progress. And what I'll do right now is I'll just kind of open that up to the board with any comments that we may have along with the RFP, and then we'll wrap it up with a status on where we are with that.
I think maybe just formally, this was just presented to the commissioners, all three projects on August 1st. So just maybe a quick review that of the three projects that we presented, that two were approved, and that is the Chenworth Bridge Trail Extension, as well as the Greenway and Blueway plan. But the Lake James boat launch was not approved. I would say that there was a lot of interest in the commissioners and council towards something to that end. I know it was less prioritized for us, but as you know, I think it could be a key component, or that type of solution will be a key component in the Greenway and Blueways plan.
Very good. And thanks for being there and making that presentation. It was really good of you and Rob to do that and represent us. Any other discussion about specifically the RFP Chenworth Trail Extension?
So I think, Rob's on conference call. Rob's been drafting the current RFP. I think that there is still some additional work to be completed on that before we can formalize it. And I think the other piece of it, there's been like Aggie and I met with Steve Moriarty from the County Highways Department, who has deep experience in creating these, and he may be a resource that we want to utilize for any of our, and he's volunteered to help with any of our RFPs, just to help make sure we're aligned to, proper language, formatting, setup, whatever's needed in that too. Rob, I don't know if you have any comments about the status on that RFP?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, hopefully that will continue to be true. I am just getting into the rain. It's getting awfully dark where I'm at. But the one thing on the Chenworth was after meeting with a few people like Carrie Groniger, we want to do some alternatives for possibly other options for Chenworth, depending upon where we end up with money. And unfortunately, as Mike said, I'm traveling. I'm coming back for a conference, and quite honestly, all my bandwidth has been taken up with this conference up until now. So I really hope the next week or so, I'm going to be able to get you guys all a draft RFP for Chenworth to review.
Okay, thank you.
So we've submitted the RFP.
No.
When does it look like we could start? If
We have not, you mean once we submitted it?
Once we,
Oh.
well, we've not.
It hasn't been submitted, no, it hasn't actually been formally created yet. We've been drafting it. I think it still will need a step going through in front of the commissioners again, I think, for approval to go out. And then we'll, I think maybe we do want to talk about the process for the RFPs after that.
Yeah. All right, so the long and short of it is that although we approved the draft at our last meeting, it's still being circulated through the local processes, and we're gathering feedback, and we're going to incorporate that in to the final revision. So
And that relates to the Trails Master Plan? Or
That was just the
Chenworth?
Chinworth.
the
Just the
Chinworth
Chenworth.
extension.
So do we need to, just in terms of timing, right? We've preliminary approved it. Do we need to approve the final draft as a board before it goes in front of the commissioners? Or can we,
And you're still talking about Chenworth?
Chinworth, yes. I'm just trying to think about timing, that,
I have a note from our last meeting on, well, it looks like I had Rob and I had well, we didn't have a meeting. We connected, and I have a note from that that it would be due September the 24th or the 29th. I can't read my handwriting here, but that was a deadline.
do you know, Rob, offhand, the deadline for the RFP?
I could not hear Troy, so I apologize.
No, but do you know what the deadline for the RFP is? Is there a deadline?
There is not a deadline. As soon as, I'll turn the one in for the master plan, and then Chenworth will turn it as soon as we approve it.
Okay, so then I guess my question is, if we need to approve it as a board,
We have not approved the Chenworth one.
oh, we have not, okay,
It was the master plan that we
I
approved.
think we should review that and approve it as a board.
The Ch-
So if we want to expedite it, well, I'd like to have it in 2 weeks, or we can wait till our meeting in September to seek approval of that.
and that was essentially my question. If we still need to approve it as a board, I don't know if we want to wait another 4 weeks to approve it once it's completed, or do we want to have an interim meeting in 2 weeks when we expect it'll be completed and approve it at that point?
That's an interesting question. I guess I'll weigh in with my thoughts on the matter. So I think that we're all familiar with what we're trying to do now with it, and it's been circulated for feedback. I would propose that, just to keep things streamlined, because timing is important, that we would incorporate that feedback and just accept it as is and move forward, if the rest of the group is okay with that.
So basically, I mean, I think you're asking that we approve it today then, based on the current draft and the expected additional language that's going into it?
Right. Unless people would want to have another meeting to review that and approve it.
Yeah, I don't know that I have looked at the current draft.
Okay.
And if we have access to it, I'd be real comfortable
Yeah.
approving it today.
Yeah, Rob, that's not on the SharePoint, I don't believe, is it?
So guys, I really can't hear anybody but you.
Okay.
Everybody else is breaking up. I think I'm in a really bad spot here for service.
All right. Well, we were just discussing is the RFP, I don't believe the current draft is on the SharePoint for review, is it?
Only the Trail Master Plan has been put out for review. Chenworth is not ready yet.
Okay. So do you think, Troy had the proposal that we approve it today, knowing that there's additional language that has been discussed that's going in it. And then once it's complete, we're able to move forward with it. Now, Aggie commented that she'd prefer to see the current draft of it before approving it.
Yeah, I think we ought to approve the Chenworth plan once it's complete.
Okay,
I'm not worried about the Trail Master Plan as much, but because we've already approved it, and if there needs to be a few tweaks, I think everybody's okay with that. But this one, we haven't even seen exactly what we want to do yet.
okay. So then the question is, if we think we'll have it in the next week or so, should we put a meeting on in 2 weeks for that approval, or just review it at our next planned meeting in September?
I can tell you Although obviously it gives me a lot of work to do. I like the idea of doing it in 2 weeks.
Okay, so let's,
If everybody else agrees, let's do one in 2 weeks.
all right, yeah,
Okay.
so that sounds fine. So let's look at our calendars for 2 weeks from,
The other thing I want to add to this, and maybe not everybody knows it, this money has to be spent essentially by the end of next year. That's not wholly accurate, but it's accurate enough for this purpose.
okay. So we want to keep it moving along then. All right. So that would put us at the 31st. I'm available that day.
I'll
I
be
am
traveling.
not available the afternoon of the 31st.
Okay, and Matt's not available.
I'll be going the whole next week then.
Okay,
I could meet that morning on the 31st if necessary. We'd have a quorum still.
okay,
And
All
I'm
right.
Rob, are you gonna be here on the 31st in the morning?
Yes,
okay.
I'm just in court all afternoon of the 31st.
Okay.
All right, so let's
And
find a,
Rhonda, would
Yeah.
you be available the morning of the 31st of August?
How about the 29th? Could we do that? Like morning of the 29th?
I'm out of town that day, but if there's a quorum, that's fine.
I could do the 29th.
Me too.
Rob, are you available on the 29th?
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. So 11 o'clock on the 29th?
That would
Yeah,
work.
it worked for me.
Yep.
Does that work for you, Rhonda? Okay. Well, how about the afternoon or even 8 a.m.? I'm not even available. I'm just,
Yeah. It wouldn't take us long, right?
Yeah.
To review it. We could have it reviewed and then just come and,
yeah,
Now, at one point, we were on a different timeline than we're on now, but some of us were holding time the morning of the 28th for a pre-bid meeting, August the 28th.
I'm available the 28th. Are you available the 28th, Rob?
Okay, let me get back to looking here.
Yeah, I do
No.
have that on my calendar.
And Rhonda, I don't know if a
That's Monday the
room was
28th?
scheduled
Yes.
for that or not, though.
I have something from
Monday
10:30
morning,
to
the
11:30.
28th?
Other than that, I'm open.
Okay, so Rob is open except for 10:30 to 11:30 on the 28th. I'm available the 28th, others are?
I would have to zoom in for that.
Okay.
For
yeah,
sure.
I could zoom in too. I
Yep.
mean, is that acceptable to be
Yeah.
joined by Zoom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Aggie, are you available?
I'm available.
Yeah, so we'd have 3 here and the other 2
I would
Zoom.
zoom in.
All right, what time works? 9 a.m.?
Rob?
Rob was good except at 10:30.
10:30, okay.
Anytime other than that, quite honestly, I just have an eye appointment, so it's not gonna take me long to get there.
Okay,
Okay.
All right, let's do 9 then.
9 a.m.?
Yep.
Does that work for you, Rhonda?
Can you send us a meeting with a Zoom link in it? Invite?
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Good.
All right, good. So that's gonna,
Now,
so-
so that is, if I'm not mistaken, before the commissioners' next meeting.
well, the commissioners' meeting was the day after, the 29th.
Yeah, so it is, the 28th is before the commissioners' next
Yes.
meeting. If we're, okay,
Mike, did I hear the commissioners meeting is the next day?
Yes,
Yeah, we would like to be on the commissioners meeting then, if you could let Rhonda know
yep.
on the agenda.
Did you hear that, Rhonda? Great.
Yep. Well, that's great. All right. Any other discussion about the Chinworth RFP extension?
so, while I know that the ARPA funds have been approved at the county level for this project, and there's been discussion of thinking of it in 2 phases, probably design build. The first being the design, and then second being build, and potentially building as much as we have funds available to build. And there are other funding sources that could help us with the build. And it doesn't have to happen all at once. Is there any other discussion about the Chinworth RFP in between meetings that is helpful for us to be aware of?
So, Rob, Aggie was talking about any additional discussions around Chinworth from other funding potential
Well,
or
just other ramifications or thoughts about it, or,
other thoughts or
Yeah.
ramifications, just any other discussions going on around it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I am now into the rain and I'm really having trouble doing it.
Okay, all right.
that's quite a storm that's going across.
Yeah. So, I haven't, I'm not aware of any more details. I suspect, there'll be other comments and such as we move along. I don't know if kind of what you're getting at is, this is approved funding to get a certain distance, right? Or is part of what you're asking of exploring under other funding to continue it?
Okay, so, two things that come to mind related to it, but it's still, the first phase has to be done.
Yeah,
One is, we could approach K21 Health Foundation to help with funding to maybe get it further. So
Okay.
that, we don't need to do that until we know better what the cost would be for construction and how far we can go with the funds that we have. A second possibility, not certainty, but possibility surfaced that is looking at TIF dollars from the old 30 West TIF area
okay,
to see if any of them could be allocated to this purpose. And so there's a couple of tiers of that. One is, could that even happen? And then two, would there be support for it? But I understand that decisions for the TIF money would likely be made in December.
okay,
So we would need to be far enough along to have an idea what we would be asking for. So just to keep it in the timeline,
Yeah.
so that if this is even a possibility, we're researching it and looking into
okay,
whether or not it would work.
all right.
So those are the two that come
Once
to
we've
mind.
submitted the request for proposal, do we have a timeline, time constraints? Do we say, you gotta have this back to us by?
Yeah,
month
we will
or-
put that out with it
Okay,
as well.
Do we know what we're thinking as far as the time goes, a month?
I think that was
2
that
months?
previous,
Yeah.
Calendar we had talked
It's
about.
actually in, we documented in the draft.
I wasn't
Yeah.
here in the last meeting if
Okay.
that was when we discussed it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's-
have a
We
copy
missed
in
it.
front of me.
I think we've shifted that time frame a little bit just
Yeah.
because we're revisiting the RFP, but I think that, maybe that will be the discussion in our 2 weeks meeting is
Yeah.
the timeline, then we're moving on.
So if the Chinworth Trail Extension and the Trails Master Plan RFP went before the commissioners on August 29th, then we'd only be 2 weeks, and approved,
Yep,
we'd only be 2 weeks off the timeline that we had previously developed, I believe.
yep. And that timeline was in an email, I think, from Rhonda,
Yeah, and I think it in minutes
preparation
and-
for the commissioners meeting.
And Marcia had helped us
Oh, yeah,
think
yeah.
that through. So, yeah, we need to
Yeah.
rethink
Yeah.
that through.
Okay. So, I think you're right, though. I think there's, for Chinworth, there's some pieces, kind of back to what you were saying, that there's a design and build phase to it. As we get into the design and understanding costs better, then do we want to pursue additional funding to continue the extension? And I would say yes, absolutely. And to your point, there could be some restrictions on the, going for grants doesn't have necessarily a time restriction on it, but the TIF has a time restriction that we have to keep in mind. I don't know if we'd be far enough along by December, but we might be.
We might be,
Yeah, we
Yeah.
might have enough knowledge to,
yeah.
But
And we
yeah.
need to know, like, how much do they need by the time that they make
Yeah.
a decision? And is there even feeling that this would be a project that would be qualified and that there would be support for it. We know that there's some interest expressed. Whether or not there'd be sufficient support, we don't know.
But I think the other piece, and I think it's come up, I don't know if we've had detailed, is the design phase being the design aspect considering, at least to Atwood, if not to the county line, whereas the build phase is really gonna be more based on the dollars available.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that makes sense. Okay. So there needs to be an exploration of the TIF timing and funding and even interest in potentially supporting this initiative, I think, prior to December.
Yeah. And a question that I had heard surfaced is the TIF boundary inclusive of where the trail would be? Or does it stop in the middle of old US 30? So I got on Beacon, and according to what I can see, and I'm not a final say, it looks to me like the TIF boundary likely would be as big on both sides of US 30 as what the county's right of way is.
Bill would know that, probably, right?
Probably.
Does the TIF boundary align with the right-of-way, or is it potentially separate? I guess it's part of that question, right?
Yeah,
I know that 30 West tip kind of ends like right when you're going in there, you probably like all the way to the county line, probably from almost when you're entering Ed Green till the county line, which is like probably half a mile or so, that might not be within, but the rest of it, I believe.
And you think that includes the right-of-way on both sides? I have no idea, but I don't want to make any assumptions.
yeah. When I looked at, Bill can interpret the map much better than I can.
Sorry to put you on the spot, Bill.
I've been actually working on TIF stuff, looking at related to this morning. I sometimes give it some thought to TIFs just in a general way. So, I know a little bit about that 30 West TIF. But I believe the bulk of that, or area, except for maybe that last little bit in the county line is within the 30 West TIF.
Okay.
I guess we'd have to find out, can it be used for that kind of purpose or whatever?
Yeah, Rob, we're just having a discussion with Bill Holder about the range boundaries of the TIF. So some homework needs to be done there. Who's our TIF expert?
Yeah, and I don't know that it will change
Yeah.
the RFP that we will approve on August 28th. But it can make a difference on
Additional funding.
funding
Right.
that would come up in actually short order
Yep,
compared to how fast things can move. Yeah,
okay.
okay, thank you.
So how do,
Definitely make a map of
okay.
30 West TIF and, maybe propose, or at least an idea of where that trail might go or something, or at least show what 30, you know, and, right, so I should be able to have a pretty detailed map that you know how those two kind of line up.
Okay.
So what are our next steps to even figure out if this is reasonable? Because you mentioned whether there's an appetite to use the TIF for this purpose, but I have no idea who would we even start talking to on that to understand. Yeah, hold on. Go ahead, Rob.
I think we probably ought to get the design phase plan back before we go a whole lot further on this.
Hold on a
If
sec.
we can get the design phase out further,
All right, so Rob's proposing that we get the design phase out further
Yeah.
before we pursue this. Just so I think we have better information probably on our side before we start that.
And I'd like to,
I think, Rob, part of the discussion is, I think there's decisions to be made on the utilization of TIF by December of this year. So I think that's the only
in
potential,
December, yeah.
yeah, in December, the potential milestone or possible need to accelerate it more so than we might have from the design phase.
Yeah, I think that you could go to somebody like maybe Sue Ann Mitchell and talk to her about those options, and we can do that here in the next month to make sure we understand those options. If you're asking as an expert, I would talk to her.
Okay,
I'll be happy to do that with somebody else if they want to participate.
all right. Yeah, so that, we'll put that down as a follow-up item then, Rob, that you and anyone else may, start talking with Sue Ann on this, just to at least have the initial discussions. Okay?
And I think Commissioner Groninger may have some good input. I've heard him talk about another project, and I'm not sure exactly where it is, but it might, again, be intersecting Old US 30, that it might be helpful to think about a tech park
Oh, yeah,
expansion.
yep.
And how that may or may not influence how we're thinking about a trail and how far we really want to try
Okay.
and get it out.
Yeah, Rob, just so you know, Aggie was talking about the potential tech park and how that could influence a trail extension in that area. So just talking to Carrie in addition to understand that better as we are working on this longer, or larger design plan going out 30. Okay? Tell me if I'm not tell me if I'm not representing the conversation well enough to Rob, so.
It sounds spot on to me, Mike. All right, anything else as it relates to Chinworth? Okay,
Nope, nothing else on Chinworth for me.
okay, public? Okay. All right, so let's move on to the RFP master, or Trails Master Plan. And that is actually, in fact, the one that we had approved. I had those two backwards when I briefed
That's
a little
fine.
bit earlier. So that is actually the one that's out right now for feedback, and we're going to incorporate that information. And it should be, I would expect to have that done in a reasonable period of time, although I don't think that we've got a formal deadline for that, but it is in process and top of mind, so.
Yeah, so I guess my only question, just a reminder back to Rob, I know you're drafting these, and can you just put the current drafts into the SharePoint so the board can review the current status, knowing that we know that it's being modified? I think both for the Chinworth and for the master plan for the trailways and for the trails.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'll send you all a text or email when I get them in there.
Great, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
All right. Seems like we're moving a little bit quick here.
That's okay, Troy.
Okay. Any other further business to come before the council or before the board?
So I think one thing, Aggie, you might have been talking about this, but Aggie and I presented to the CAC this week on Monday. It's the County Action Council,
I
so
think it's Community Action
Community
Council,
Action Council.
hosted by the Community Foundation.
Yeah, do you want to give a quick summary?
No, go ahead.
Well, it had, I think, a good representation of the community across the county, of business leaders and such, and community leaders. Yeah, we went through our main deck and including adding a few comments about the recent approvals that we just discussed for the RFPs, and very well received. Again, there's still a lot of interest and energy, and I think that it's really baked into our master plan, but I think the continuing theme of connecting our communities came out very strongly supported in that group.
And there was lots of interest in providing input to and learning about the Trails Master
Yeah.
Plan when that information is available.
Yes. Yep. We also talked a little bit about access to schools, which is somewhat built into the master's plan as facilities, but for kids to be able, to have transportation to schools other than just cars and buses, Yeah, and then we also talked a little bit about how some of it was informative, right? That our responsibility in some ways starts at the boundaries of the towns and the city, but we need to work very closely with, you know, with the leaders in each entity to make sure we're all working well together on how the trails will connect to the current infrastructure as well.
And in that meeting, and it also came up, Mike and I had met with Steve Moriarty, superintendent for
Yep.
the county highway department, but safety for the Amish community in their active transportation. It came up as a concern at this meeting, but not necessarily with answers, but a recognition of a shared concern and something that, as we think about our plans moving forward, I think there's more and more urgency.
Yeah.
Yeah, around taking actions. And I know MACOG has got some efforts underway.
And there's some community leaders that I think we'll want to talk to in that area as we are developing our plans. So, good.
So it was a good meeting,
Yeah.
and it was Kerry that had invited us to present and introduced us. So I believe he's an active participant in that group, as far as I know. So one thing that I wanted to bring up to this body, this is really, really early, but I was chatting with someone who's a leader in the Tippecanoe Lake community, and they have young children, like preschool age. And he and some of his peers are talking about how could we get a trail around the lake? Or how could we get a trail close to the lake, you know, that people can go to? So I explained where the priorities are for county parks, and it's connecting communities, not necessarily providing resources in specific communities. But I talked to him some about steps to, you know, even start a nonprofit, and a bit about the Syracuse Wawasee Trails Group. So we may eventually hear from them or be able to connect with them. And I just wanted to mention that.
That'd be a good
to
source
know.
as we're looking for public input on the master plan for the greenways and blueways to make sure they have input on that as well.
Yeah.
Good. I think the other thing, we've had some emails going around, no decisions, about the upcoming IPRA conference.
Oh, that's right.
And that's November 14th through 16th in Fort Wayne. The 16th is one of our current planned dates, but I was looking at the content in the agenda. Not everything applies to us and where we're at right now, so we can be selective for which sessions we attend. I did find a lot of value in the expo, though, as well, for, you know, the businesses that are developed, you know, that develop and have the amenities. It's quite informational. Troy and I went last year, so I think both of us are open to, if there's other members that want to go, to having those members go. But if there's, yeah, let's start there. I think, Matt, you said you weren't available, or only for a day or two of
Yeah,
it?
I was I could
Okay.
be available.
I think, Rob, you had that same comment. And then Troy, I know that you had said you had gone before, so
Yeah.
you'll open it up to someone else. I am interested in going again, but really whether Rob, Matt, or Aggie, if you want to go, I'll certainly defer.
If others are,
When I looked at it, correct me if I'm wrong, it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, is it not?
No, I think it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Man, I looked at my calendar wrong then. When I was looking at this. Oh, you're right. Yeah, I think I would be open, and so I would like to go.
Okay,
okay.
good.
And for myself, this may sound funny, I have been to so many conferences.
Yep.
It's like I'm happy to not go to large conferences. But I have signed up to attend the Trails Gathering on September 28th, 29th in Goshen. I can only go for the first day, on Thursday, the 28th. But I forwarded to all of you an email from Indiana Parks and Recreation Association, IPRA, about this trails gathering. You may have gotten the email too. I don't know what everybody's getting from them.
Okay.
Yeah. But I thought it looked really interesting because it's so trails specific.
You know, Aggie, I think I would, you know, being that I went to the Indiana Parks and Recreation Conference last year, I think with that good background, I think I might be interested to attend that with you on probably the 28th. Kind of take it down just a notch more specifically. Okay.
All right, so that was, Aggie was discussing the 28th and 29th of September, a trail conference from IPRA that Troy and she will go to. And then based on the other comments for the actual meeting, Rob is interested. So is it, you know, the group okay with Rob and I attending?
Great.
All right.
We have a
Great.
little funding for it too, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know how it happened last year, but miraculously, we were registered for that conference. So I don't know.
I took care of it.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Thanks,
But
Troy.
I can help you.
All right, Troy will help me on that one then.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
But as far as the conference in Goshen, I would be willing to, you know, just drive on up there with my personal vehicle. I think when we went to Indianapolis, they
Yeah.
reimbursed mileage and stuff, but I drive to Elkhart almost every day anyway,
This is
so.
just Goshen.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is there a cost associated with that?
If you're a non-member,
Uh-huh.
it's only $30.
Okay,
If you're a member, it's $15.
okay.
And it includes lunch,
Are you a
at least
member?
on Thursday.
Okay.
Uh-uh.
Well, we'll figure it out.
Okay. And I resent you the original email so that, in case you didn't have it.
Okay. Thank you.
All right,
Sounds like we're getting ready to get geared up for some conferences here. And that is good information for the work that we've got at hand, and I'm sure we can incorporate that back into our processes. All right, anything further? Okay, looks like we're going to get some time back on our hour today. So if there's nothing further, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Well, second?
All those in favor?
Aye?
Yep.
All those opposed? Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for your time.
All right, thanks, Rob, we're adjourned.
Nice job, Troy.
Okay, you currently have the banner for leading the
Can I
shortest
sign in,
meeting.
what color do I have to sign in?
It doesn't matter,
Okay,
but I need you to sign a couple that you were gone at, so you could do that for me.
just this one?
Yeah, that would be the one you need to sign.
I'm always nervous when it's just a signature
I
sheet.
know. And you were gone for this one,
Yes.
so you won't sign that.
All right. Thank you
Thanks.
for that.
Sorry, it was late.
No, that's all right.